Good day. Today, we're taking the walking path to Coulson, Montana. Today we're on the banks of the Yellowstone River in eastern Montana. We're discussing Coulson, Montana versus Billings, Montana. Now this is not a basketball game, it's survival of the fittest city. Back in the 1800s, this area on the Yellowstone River was known as the Clark Fork Bottom, and it was known for its freight shipping on the river. So back in the 1800s, the Yellowstone River here was a busy place, running freight up and down it. You would also see coming up the river, you'd see trappers and hunters running their goods up and down it. In 1870, the population of this area was 145 people. Just up from where I'm standing here, in 1877, a city was built. It was called Coulson, Montana. It was expected they came up with the name Coulson to attract Coulson Packet Shipping Company that ran river boats from St. Louis up here to the Montana territories. At one point, Coulson Packet Company did run a riverboat up this river. They only got a little ways beyond this point up here when it got too shallow for them to continue. So they turned the riverboat back and never came back. Coulson, Montana had quite a few businesses in it, but it was mostly made up of saloons and dance halls. Even had a two-story hotel and the only post office in the area. The only thing Coulson didn't have was a church and a jail. Now, since Coulson didn't have a jail, law enforcement would take it into their hands and enforce the law with a good beating. This was the Wild West. Billings was founded in 1882, 5 years after Coulson, Montana, and their big thing was the railroad, the Northern Pacific Railroad running through downtown. So that was their main usage of freight coming in by train. And as you can see, the railroad still runs through downtown Billings. The city of Billings was named after Frederick Billings. He was a president of the Northern Pacific Railroad. Coulson had just about everything you would need for a city. In fact, one thing that they had, which was a first, they had the first drive-thrus. Looking at this picture here, you'll see this is a saloon. You see these huge doors? Those huge doors were to allow horses to ride in. Cowboys would ride in on the horses, get a beer, and leave. First drive-through was born. This being the Wild West back in the 1800s, many arguments were solved Coulson City with a gunfight where many of the people were killed in their boots. So the cemetery became known as Boot Hill. Boot Hill is way up over in this direction over here, and I'll show that to you in a bit here. So we made it to Boot Hill Cemetery, and once again, this is where the people of Coulson, when they passed away, this is where they would be buried. There's an entry sign. This is middle December. As you can see, there's some snow on the ground. Temperature's not too bad though. This is a fairly new built monument here in Boot Hill Cemetery. And this one says, in memory of those who blazed the trail and showed us to our west, in boots and spurs, they lie on this hill, find rest. And this one says, upon this rugged hill, the long trail past, these men of relentless will find rest at last. And this side says, the stream flows on, but it matters not to the sleepers. Here by the world forced, the heroes of many tale unsung. They lived and died when the West was young. And the final one on this side says, this monument marks a historic spot where 35 lie buried. They played the drama called life for fortune and fame, lost their lives, lost their game. So basically, it's a monument dedicating those in the 1800s that blazed their ways into the West, the frontiersmen. So there's not a lot here for monuments. There's a plaque over here. And this one says, in memory of Mrs. Ellen Alderson, died January 14th, 1881, Coulson, Montana. Yeah, it looks like there's another gravestone over here. We'll go take a look. And this gravestone says, H.M. Muggins Taylor, born 1830, died October 1882. Result of a gunshot wound in Coulson, September 27th, 1882. So there's not a lot of grave sites to see here for the 5 years that Coulson was a city. There's only 2 monuments. But if you look real closely in the grass here, you'll see markers. So that marker I just showed you, evidently recently they found over 150 people buried in here without any headstones. Now, 150 people dying in Coulson over 5 years, that's 30 people per year. So that kind of takes it to the other extreme. Why were there so many deaths? So the only gravestone other than the one I showed you over here, like I mentioned, is Muggins right here. And he was a deputy sheriff in Coulson, Montana. And he was shot dead in September 27th, 1882 in the laundromat of Coulson, Montana. There's not much to go on as far as what the argument was over or what he was trying to, law enforcement he was trying to enforce. So I guess you can just assume someone was laundering money there. You know, the hardest part of doing these vlogs is not having people around to laugh at these really good jokes. So in my earlier shots, I got a pretty good view of Sacrifice Cliff. And this is a pretty good view from here. It would be right there. You can see it drops off very steep. Evidently, Sacrifice Cliff was named Sacrifice Cliff because it was named after an Indian warrior who sacrificed his life going off that cliff. Now, this warrior, he came back from some types of travel that he was doing, and upon his return, his whole village was just about wiped out due to disease, an illness that went through the tribe. One of them stricken was his squaw or wife, and he was so distraught over that he couldn't go on living. So he blindfolded himself, and story goes he had a white horse and he rode off of that cliff to his death down below, hence Sacrifice Cliff. So this warrior was most likely a Crow Indian, as this is a location where a lot of Crow Indians, their tribe was located. And as you enter into Boot Hill Cemetery, there's a plaque here, and this plaque describes that Native American that sacrificed himself off the Sacrifice Cliff. And it was a smallpox epidemic that went through his tribe that killed most of them. So who won the battle for the Yellowstone Valley City? Well, as you can see, Coulson did not make it. The railroad did much better shipping freight than the river ever could. So the city of Coulson is pretty much nothing left in it, no remnants, nothing. Today, if you visit Coulson, you're gonna find not much of anything left. No building remnants, nothing out here. Just the Yellowstone River. And recently, they put a monument here in this rock for the city of Coulson. Looks like beavers have had their way with this tree. This is the city of Billings today from the rim rocks. As you can see, it's a very large city. You know, Billings has over 110,000 people that live here in the city and surrounding area. Today up here on the Rim Rocks in Billings, Montana, I brought with me a canoe. It's a cream ale. It's manufactured from a distributor here in Billings, Montana. Let's give it a try, see what we think. Yeah, a little bit of cream in it. Almost reminds you of a butter beer. That's a good beer. I was supposed to go on a hike today in the Billings area, but as you can see, a snowstorm hit. It's dropped about 6 inches of snow so far. So hiking, I think we'll leave that for another day.